The immense glass dome of the Galactic University of Military History shimmered beneath the light of the Centauri system's twin suns, casting rivers of golden light across the sprawling campus. Inside one of its towering crystal-walled lecture halls, 30 students from every corner of known space waited for the semester's final assignment. Professor Grex slowly paced across the room, his long scaled tail sweeping across the polished floor as a holographic galaxy rotated above the podium. "This," he announced, "will determine whether you graduate." The quiet murmur that had filled the classroom vanished instantly. With a flick of his clawed hand, hundreds of emblems belonging to ancient civilizations appeared in the air. Great empires, legendary conquerors, forgotten kingdoms, and species whose military doctrines had shaped galactic history for thousands of years. "For your final research project," Grex continued, "each team will investigate the complete military history of a single civilization and present its strategic evolution before the faculty in 2 weeks." At the back of the room, Blue slumped lower in his seat with an exaggerated sigh. His liquid-like body lazily shifted shape every few seconds, making it impossible to tell whether he was paying attention or preparing for another nap. Beside him, Stone remained perfectly still. Her crystalline body reflected dozens of tiny rainbows across the classroom walls, every movement measured with machine-like precision. The two students could not have been more different, yet fate had paired them together since their first year. Professor Grex glanced around the room, amusement flickering across his reptilian features. "I know what you're all thinking." A dozen students smiled. "You all hope to study the Arcturus Empire, the Orion Collective, perhaps the Varn Dominion." His mandibles clicked in what passed for a grin. "Not this year." A collective groan echoed through the hall. "This year's assignments will be completely random." With another gesture, a glowing selection sphere drifted into the center of the classroom, pulsing softly with blue light. "One team at a time," the professor ordered. "Place your hands on the sphere." Blue rolled his 4 eyes. Stone calmly stood. Neither of them realized that within the next 60 seconds, they would be assigned the least documented civilization in galactic history, humanity. And before their research was finished, they would begin to question everything the galaxy believed about war. "It will randomly assign your civilization," Blue and Stone watched, as other pairs went forward. Some got exciting assignments, like the warrior clans of Betelgeuse, while others received seemingly boring ones, like the peaceful traders of the Plioa system. When their turn came, Stone glided forward gracefully. Blue followed his form, wobbling slightly. They placed their hands on the sphere stones, crystalled fingers, and Blue's ever-shifting appendages touching the smooth surface. The sphere glowed and displayed their assignment. Earth. Blue's body rippled with laughter. That tiny planet in the backwaters of the Milky Way, the one that only joined the Federation 300 years ago. Professor Gray's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his ancient eyes. "Every civilization has something to teach us. Blue, you might be surprised." Was already accessing the university's database through her neural link Earth, third planet, from a single yellow star, oxygen, nitrogen atmosphere, gravity 9.8 meters per second squared, joined the Galactic Federation in 2724. After achieving unified planetary government, Blue morphed his body to mimic a human shape, mockingly. "Look at me. I'm a human. I only have 2 eyes and can't even change my shape." His classmates gurgled and chittered. With amusement, "That's enough." Professor Gray's voice cut through the laughter. "Remember, thorough research requires an open mind. You have access to all historical archives. I expect a comprehensive analysis of their military development, major conflicts, and tactical innovations." Stone nodded seriously, while Blue reformed into his usual blob-like shape. With an air of resignation, they turned to their seats as the last few pairs received their assignments. "You know," Stone whispered to Blue, her crystalline voice tinkling like wind chimes. "This might be interesting. Humans achieved space travel only 1,000 years ago, but they were accepted into the Federation unusually quickly." Blue's upper eyes rolled, while his lower ones focused on his datapad. "They probably just got lucky. This will be the easiest assignment ever. We'll look at their few primitive wars, write up a quick report, and be done." As the class ended, Professor Gray watched Blue and Stone leave the classroom. His ancient face held a slight smile, and he muttered to himself, "Oh, young ones, you have no idea what you're about to learn outside the classroom." Stone was already organizing their research schedule. "We should start with their earliest recorded conflicts and work our way forward." "Whatever," Blue replied, his form stretching lazily. "How bad can it be? It's just Earth. What's the worst we could find?" Little did they know, their simple assignment was about to challenge everything they thought they knew about warfare, survival, and the true nature of humanity's place in the galaxy. The university's archive chamber was a vast theater of floating data crystals, each containing millennia of historical records. Blue and Stone sat at their research station surrounded by holographic displays showing Earth's history. "This can't be right," Blue said, his form quivering with confusion. "Stone, can you check these numbers again?" Stone's crystalline fingers moved through the data streams with practiced precision. "I've checked 3 times already. The numbers are correct." Her metallic voice held a note of disbelief. "Humans fought over 15 other recorded conflicts before achieving unified planetary government." Blue's body rippled so violently he nearly lost his shape entirely. "But that's impossible. Most species only have a few hundred wars in their entire history. The Arcturus Empire, the greatest military power we know, only fought 3,000 battles in their entire history." They stared at the holographic display showing a timeline of human conflicts. The glowing line of battles, wars, and skirmishes formed an almost solid wall of light. "Look at this," Stone said, zooming in on a particular period they called this World War II. Almost every nation on their planet fought at the same time. The scale of combat is overwhelming. Blue stretched one of his eyes closer to the display. "Wait, what's this term here? Civil War." He paused, processing the information. "That can't be. They fought themselves." "Not just once," Stone replied, her metallic surface dimming slightly in what passed for shock among her species. "Multiple times across different regions and areas, humans fought within their own nations, between different groups of their own species." Blue absorbed this information, literally parts of his liquid form turning darker with distress. That's not normal. Even the most aggressive species in the galaxy don't fight their own kind like this." They spent hours diving deeper into the archives. Each new discovery left them more astounded than the last. Stone created an organized list of observations, while Blue drifted between different displays, his form changing colors with each new revelation. "Their weapons," Stone noted, her voice resonating with concern. "Look at how quickly they developed them, from simple metal tools to atomic weapons, in less than 10,000 years. Most species take at least 50,000 years to make similar advances." Blue moved to another display, examining footage of ancient human battles. "And look at how they fight. They just keep going, even when injured or outnumbered. Most species would surrender or retreat. But humans," his voice trailed off as they watched recordings of desperate last stands and against all odds victories. Professor Greystone called out in surprise as their teacher glided into the archive chamber. The professor's scaled face held an unreadable expression. "How goes the research?" Professor Blue bubbled anxiously. "There must be some mistake. These records, they can't be accurate. No species could survive fighting this much." Professor Gray's tail swished thoughtfully. "Oh, and why do you think that Stone's crystalline form sparkle?" As she processed the question. "The physical and psychological toll alone should have driven them to extend the constant conflict. The scale of destruction. How did they survive?" Perhaps Professor Gray suggested, his ancient eyes glinting. "That is exactly what you should be trying to understand." He turned to leave, then paused. "And you've only scratched the surface. Wait until you discover how they fought when they weren't at war." After the professor left, Blue and Stone looked at each other in confusion. "When they weren't at war," Blue's form rippled with uncertainty. "What does that mean?" Stowe pulled up another set of records. According to this, humans had something called sports and martial arts. They practiced fighting, even during peacetime. Blue's color drained slightly. "Stone, I don't think this is going to be the easy assignment we thought it would be." "No, Stone, Agreed. Her metallic surface reflecting the countless battles displayed around them. I think we're dealing with something entirely different from anything we studied before. The endless stream of data continued to flow around them, each new piece of information revealing that humanity's relationship with combat went far deeper than either of them had imagined. Morning light from the twin suns streamed through the archive chamber's crystal walls as Blue and Stone began their third day of research. Their research station was now cluttered with multiple holographic displays showing the evolution of human weapons throughout history. "I don't understand," Blue said, his fluid form condensing in concentration. "Why would they keep making new weapons when they already had effective ones?" Stone manipulated the timeline display, spreading out images of human weapons from different eras. "Look at this progression. They started with sharpened stones and sticks, but they never stopped improving them." The holograms showed an endless parade of human innovation: spears, bows, swords, gunpowder weapons, artillery, tanks, aircraft, missiles, and more. Each invention more deadly than the last. Most species discover one or two effective weapons and stick with them, Blue observed, stretching himself between multiple displays. The Arcturus Empire has used the same plasma cannon design for 10,000 years, but humans, they just kept changing everything. Stones, crystalline, fingers, trace the timeline, and look at the speed of development from their first primitive firearms to nuclear weapons in less than 500 years. That's she paused, her metallic surface flickering with calculations. That's 10 times faster than any other known species. But why? Blue's form rippled with frustration. Why not just stick with what works? Their discussion was interrupted by another student passing by, a tall insectoid being named Click. He stopped to look at their displays, his antenna twitching with amusement, still studying that primitive Earth history. Click chittered. "We're researching the Arcturus Empire's Grand Fleet. Now that's real military power." Blue was about to agree when Stone spoke up, her voice unusually sharp. "Actually, we just found something interesting about that." She pulled up a new display during what humans called World War II. They developed radar technology in just 6 years. It took the Arcturus Empire 800 years to develop something similar. Click's antennae drooped slightly. "Well, that's in here," Stone continued, her metallic surface gleaming with intensity. "Humans went from their first powered flight to space-capable aircraft in just 60 years. How long did it take the Grand Fleet to achieve that?" Click quickly scuttled away, leaving Blue staring at Stone in surprise. His liquid form had turned a lighter shade, indicating amazement. "I didn't know you could be so aggressive," Blue said. Stone's surface dimmed slightly. "I just don't like seeing facts ignored. Look at this." She brought up a new series of images. Humans didn't just develop weapons. They constantly adapted them. If something didn't work, they fixed it. If they couldn't fix it, they created something new. Blue moved closer to examine a particular display. "These are all from the same weapon, but they look so different." "Yes," Stone confirmed, "they called it a rifle, but they made thousands of variations, each one trying to solve a different problem or work in different conditions: hot weather, cold weather, underwater, in space." In space, Blue's form wobbled with shock. They were already thinking about space warfare before they had space travel. Stone brought up another display. They had stories about it. They imagined space battles before they even left their atmosphere. They called it science fiction. Blue absorbed this information literally and figuratively. So they weren't just developing weapons, they were imagining future weapons. "They might need," exactly, Stone said. "And look at this data on their current military technology. Since joining the Federation, everything they learned from their past wars, they've applied to modern weapons development. Their innovation rate hasn't slowed at all." Blue's color darkened thoughtfully. "You know, I'm starting to understand why Professor Gray assigned us this research. This isn't just about studying their history, is it?" "No," Stone agreed, her surface reflecting the countless weapons displayed around them. "I think we're studying why the Federation was so quick to accept Earth as a member, and why they gave them a seat on the Defense Council within just 50 years. They both fell silent, watching the endless parade of human military innovation scroll. Across their displays, each weapon telling a story of humanity's relentless drive to adapt, improve, and survive. The fourth day of research found Blue and Stone in a private study pod, away from the main archive chamber. The walls displayed footage of various human battles, while STM took careful notes and Blue watched with all four of his eyes wide open. "This doesn't make sense," Blue said, his form shivering, as they watched historical footage of a small human unit fighting against overwhelming odds. They should have surrendered. Their defeat was certain. Why didn't they retreat? Stone's crystalline surface flickered as she analyzed the data. According to these records, humans have a concept called fighting spirit. They sometimes choose to fight, even when victory seems impossible. But that's not logical. Protested, his liquid body forming small, agitated reels. Every species we studied follows basic survival patterns. When faced with certain defeat, they retreat. When outnumbered 3-1, they surrender. It's simple mathematics. They watched more footage of human battles through history. Thermop, Stalingrad, the Alamo, places where humans fought despite hopeless odds. "Look at this," Stone said, bringing up new data. "Humans can continue fighting even after sustaining injuries that would incapacitate most species. They call it fighting through the pain." Blue stretched closer to examine the medical data. Their bodies produce chemicals called adrenaline and endorphins during combat. But what's really strange is their psychological response to being wounded. Instead of becoming more cautious, Stone noted, her voice tilling with disbelief, they often become more aggressive. They have a saying, "Wounded animals fight the hardest." Their discussion was interrupted by Professor Gray entering the study pod. "How goes the psychological analysis?" Professor Blue bubbled anxiously. "We found something disturbing. Humans don't follow any standard combat logic. They're unpredictable." "Ah," Professor Gray's tail swished thoughtfully. "Have you learned about guerrilla warfare yet?" Stone pulled up new data files. "We just started studying it. It's when a weaker force uses hit-and-run tactics against a stronger enemy." But her surface dimmed with concern. "The psychological impact on the stronger force is devastating. The constant threat of attack, the inability to feel safe, the wear on morale." "Indeed," Professor Gray nodded, "most species engage in direct combat. Clean, simple, logical. But humans—" He gestured at the displays. "They found ways to turn their weaknesses into strengths." Blue's color darkened. "We found records of something called psychological warfare. They don't just fight with weapons, they fight with fear, uncertainty, and deception. And that's not all," Stone added, bringing up more displays. "They have concepts like fighting dirty, and all's fair in love. And war. Most species have strict combat protocols, but humans, they adapt." Blue finished his form, rippling with realization. "If they can't win with strength, they use speed. If they can't win with speed, they use deception. If they can't win during the day, they attack at night." Stone completed, "They use weather terrain, even their own casualties, his tactical advantages. Everything is a potential weapon." "Professor," Gray watched them with growing approval. "And what have you learned about their training methods?" Stone brought up new footage of human military exercises. "They train constantly, even in peacetime. They have something called war games, where they practice fighting against themselves." And sports. Blue added, his color brightening with excitement. "They turn combat training into entertainment. Wrestling, boxing, martial arts. They spend their leisure time practicing different ways to fight." Professor Gray's scaled face broke into a small smile. "Now you're beginning to understand. Your class presentation is tomorrow. Are you ready to share what you've learned about humanity's approach to warfare?" Blue and Stone looked at each other. The past 4 days had completely changed their view of the supposedly primitive humans. Professor Stone said, her metallic voice serious. "I think the real question is, are our classmates ready to learn the truth about humans?" "Good answer," Professor Gray replied, heading toward the door. "Very good answer indeed." After he left, Blue and Stone turned back to their research, now seeing human combat history with new eyes. It wasn't just about weapons or tactics. It was about an entire species that had turned survival into an art form. The main lecture hall of the Galactic University of Military History was packed with students from various species. Holographic displays floated ready at the front of the room. Blue and Stone stood before their classmates, about to present their findings on Earth's military history. The insectoid student had just finished a presentation on the Arcturus Empire's grand fleet, and that concludes my report on the most powerful military force in known space. He chittered proudly, his antenna high with satisfaction. Professor Gray nodded. Thank you. Click next. We have Blue and Stone presenting their research on Earth. A few snickers rippled through the classroom. Blue's form wavered slightly with nervousness, but Stone stood firm, her crystalline surface gleaming with determination. Before we begin, Stone said, her metallic voice clear and confident, we'd like to ask the class a question. How many battles would you consider a lot for a species to fight before achieving unified government? The Arcturus Empire fought 3,000 battles. Click announced proudly. The Orion Collective fought 2,000. Another student added. Blue's form shifted as he activated the first display. Earth fought over 15,000 recorded conflicts before unification. The classroom fell silent, then burst into laughter. Impossible, chittered. No species could survive that much. Warfare Stone calmly activated another display. These are verified historical records, but the number of battles isn't the most interesting part. She brought up footage of human combat tactics. This is how humans fight when outnumbered. The class watched in stunned silence, as historical footage showed humans using guerrilla warfare, tactical retreats, and surprise attacks. Most species surrender when outnumbered 3-1. Blue explained, his color deepening with confidence. Humans routinely fought and won against forces 10 times their size. Propaganda, someone shouted. No species can do that. Stone brought up more displays. This is how fast humans developed their weapons. The holographic timeline showed humanity's rapid progression from spears to space weapons. They went from primitive projectiles to new nuclear fusion in less than 1,000 years. Professor Gray leaned forward, watching the other students' reactions carefully. But here's what really makes humans different. Blue continued, his form rippling with excitement. They don't just fight with weapons. He displayed footage of human training exercises, sports competitions, and martial arts tournaments. They turned combat into culture. They practice fighting even during peace. Every species has warriors. Click protested, but his antennae were drooping slightly. True, Stone agreed. But humans do just have warriors. Their entire species understands combat. Look at this. She showed data on civilian resistance movements, underground armies, and popular uprisings. Even their non-warriors fight. The classroom had grown very quiet. Now Professor Gray's tail swished with approval, and finally Blue said, this is why Earth was accepted into the Federation so quickly. He displayed the statistics of Earth's current military capabilities in just 300 years since joining. They've adapted their combat experience to modern technology. Their innovation rate in weapons development is 8 times faster than any other member species. Stone finished. They now have seats on both the Defense Council and the Strategic Planning Committee. A student raised a trembling tentacle. Are you saying the Federation didn't accept Earth because they were ready? No, Stone replied, her surface gleaming. They accepted Earth because they were afraid of what would happen if they didn't. The classroom erupted in shocked whispers. Professor Gray stood up, his scaled face showing satisfaction. Thank you, Blue and Stone, he said. Would anyone like to ask questions about humanity's military history? Every appendage, tentacle, and sensor cluster in the room raised in unison. Blue's form rippled with pride as Stone began answering the first question. Their simple assignment had turned into something much more important, helping their classmates understand why humans were the most respected and feared military power in the Federation, despite being one of its youngest members. After their presentation, Blue and Stone found themselves surrounded by curious classmates. In the university's floating garden, crystalline trees sparkled around them as students from dozens of species bombarded them with questions. But how did they survive so much? Warfare asked a Gauss student, their purple clouds swirling with confusion. Give them space. Professor Gray's voice cut through the crowd as he glided toward them. The other students reluctantly backed away, though they remained within hearing distance. Professor Blue bubbled excitedly, his form still energized from the presentation. We didn't expect everyone to be so interested in Earth's history. Of course they're interested, Professor Gray replied. Settling onto a crystal bench, you just told them that everything they knew about military power in the Federation was wrong. Stone's metallic surface flickered with curiosity. Professor, there's something we don't understand. If humans are this formidable, why didn't we know about it before? Ah, Professor Gray's tail curled thoughtfully. Tell me, what do you think would happen if every species suddenly realized that one of the Federation's youngest members was also its most dangerous? Blue's color paled slightly. Panic. Exactly. Professor Gray nodded. When Earth was discovered 300 years ago, the Federation's first contact team spent months studying human history. I should know, I was there. Stone's crystalline form stiffened in surprise. You were on the first contact team. Indeed. Professor Gray's scales shifted, showing his age. We expected to find a primitive species instead. We found something that terrified us. A species that had survived more wars than any other known civilization, that had developed weapons at an impossible speed, and that had turned warfare into an art form. What did you do? Blue asked his form, rippling with intense interest. We had two choices, Professor Gray continued. We could try to contain them, which our simulation showed eventually lead to a devastating war. Or you could bring them into the Federation stone. Finished, her surface gleaming with understanding. Yes, but not just as members. We gave them seats on the Defense Council, invited them to join the Strategic Planning Committee, encouraged them to share their military expertise. Professor Gray's ancient eyes looked to distant. Some called it appeasement. I called it survival. A small crowd had gathered again, listening intently. The humans had a saying we discovered during our research. Professor Gray said, "Keep your friends close, and your enemies closer." We decided to make them our closest friends. But why hide this from everyone? Asked Click, who had been hovering nearby. Think about Earth's position now, Stone said, her voice tingling with realization. They're respected members of the Federation, sharing their knowledge, helping with defense planning. If everyone had known the truth from the start, there would have been fear, distrust, possibly even preemptive military action. Blue completed his color darkening with understanding. Professor Gray nodded approvingly. Humans had another relevant saying, the best weapon is the one you never have to fire, by bringing Earth into the Federation peacefully and quietly. We gained powerful allies instead of dangerous enemies, and now Stone added 300 years later, they're so integrated into the Federation that no one questions their presence until 2 students get assigned to study their history. Blue rippled with amusement. Yes, Professor Gray's scaled face showed a slight smile. Every few years, I make sure some students discover the truth. It helps maintain a healthy respect for our human allies without causing panic. The gathered students murmured among themselves, looking at their data pads, with new interest in Earth's history. One last question, Professor Stone said. Why did you choose us for this assignment? Professor Gray stood up, his tail swishing thoughtfully. Sometimes the most important discoveries come from those who start with no expectations. You approached Earth's history without prejudice, seeing the truth, rather than what you expected to see. As the professor glided away, Blue and Stone looked at each other, realizing their simple research assignment had uncovered one of the Federation's most carefully managed secrets. Earth wasn't just a member world, it was the sleeping giant that the Federation had wisely chosen to befriend rather than fight. 2 weeks after their presentation, Blue and Stone sat in Professor Gray's private office. The room was filled with artifacts from various civilizations, but they couldn't help noticing that the largest display case held items from Earth, that ancient metal sword, a primitive projectile weapon, and what appeared to be a dented military helmet. Your research has caused quite a stir, Professor Gray said, his tail curled comfortably around his chair. Half my students have requested to study Earth's military history for their next projects. Blue's form rippled with pride. We noticed the archive chamber has been unusually crowded lately, and not just with students. Stone added her crystalline surface, catching the light. We saw 3 Federation Defense Council members there yesterday. Professor Grayscales shifted in what they now recognized as a smile. Yes, your presentation reminded many people why we should continue studying human military history, which brings me to why I called you here today. He activated a holographic display, showing the new military training facility being built on the outskirts of the Federation capital. The Federation has decided to establish a dedicated Earth Military Studies Institute, he explained. They want to better understand and learn from human combat techniques, strategies, and innovations, and they need qualified researchers to help run it. Blue's color brightened with excitement. Are you offering us positions? Not me, Professor Gray replied. The humans themselves requested you. They were quite impressed by your analysis of their military history. Stone's surface flickered rapidly, her equivalent of surprised blinking. The humans know about our research. Of course. Gray's tail swished with amusement. Did you think Earth didn't keep track of how they're studied in the Federation? They've maintained careful surveillance of all research into their military capabilities. It's part of their strategic doctrine. Know who's studying you. That's somewhat terrifying, Blue admitted, his form shivering slightly. And exactly why we need people like you too, Professor Gray said. You understand not just their history but why it makes them unique. You've seen how their past struggles shape their approach to warfare. Most importantly, you respect their capabilities without fearing them. Stone's crystalline structure straightened with determination. When would we start? Immediately after. After graduation, Professor Gray replied. The human specifically asked for, and I quote, the blob who couldn't stop asking questions, and the crystal who saw through our tactical deceptions. Blue's color darkened with embarrassment. They were watching us that closely. Indeed, they also mentioned that your presentation helped convince several Federation Council members to approve increased military cooperation with Earth. Professor Gray's ancient eyes twinkled. It seems you've inadvertently contributed to interstellar diplomacy. Stone and Blue exchanged glances, or their species equivalent of it. Professor Stone asked, her metallic voice serious. Do you think we made the right choice? Revealing all this to our classmates. What do you think? Professor Gray countered. Blue's form rippled thoughtfully. I think understanding humans' military capabilities helps us appreciate why they're such valuable allies. Fear of the unknown is more dangerous than knowledge. And Stone added, her surface gleaming. Maybe understanding how humans survive their warlike past can help other species prepare for their own challenges. Professor Gray nodded approvingly. Then it seems you're perfect for your new positions. The humans have a saying, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Your job will be to help ensure the Federation learns the right lessons from humanity's long experience with warfare. As they left the professor's office, Blue and Stone paused to look out at the twin suns setting over the university campus. You know, Blue said, his form reflecting the orange sunset. When we first got this assignment, I thought we'd be studying a primitive civilization instead, Stone replied, her crystalline surface sparkling. We discovered that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or tactics. It was their ability to learn from every battle, adapt to any challenge, and survive against impossible odds. Blue finished. They watched as students hurry past them, many carrying datapads displaying Earth's military history, ready to help the Federation understand our most interesting members. Stone asked. Blue's form rippled with determination, as the humans would say, ready as we'll ever be.